Hi, and welcome to this session all about some basics for student orgs to recruit. My name is Joe Littell with SOA. A little bit of background about recruiting at Northwestern on the Evanston campus, discuss the org fairs in brief, offer some tips for in-person and online recruitment as well. So recruitment for student orgs can look very different depending on the type of organization, its history, and its mission. You'll hear SOA use the terms barrier-free, and those refer to groups that not only don't make any cuts to being a part of their membership, but they also don't have any extraneous audition, tryout, application, or any other sort of intake recruitment. Finding your community at Northwestern can be challenging, as we have students who come from all over the world and seek it. So we value groups that make forming community and joining one relatively simple. Most groups rely heavily on recruitment in order to fulfill their mission. Uh, it's natural that groups will graduate folks and they're looking for newcomers to fill those gaps. We'll share a little bit about how to gauge individual interest and motivations. We know some students are highly motivated before they even arrive to get involved in something they think will help their career. There are other students that might have been active in a specific activity in high school and they seek to continue it. But there's also students that they just want to find connection points, they want to try something new, and they want to have fun beyond class, and student organizations can be something that serves that purpose. So, a bit about the recruitment freeze. Um, no organizations may recruit until the first day of the organization fair. And this slide outlines a bit of that in detail in terms of the do's and do nots. So no organization may host an in-person info session during Wildcat Welcome or before the org fair takes place. Part of the reason of this is Northwestern wants to prioritize the Wildcat Welcome schedule and not complicate it any more than it already may be by adding in getting involved in student groups. You can host a Zoom or other online info session as long as it isn't a requirement or a measurement of someone's interest. So if you just want to build your presence and host something in hopes that new people who are interested show up, you can certainly promote that through your own social media platform. You can post on the Cats on Campus event calendar, but you may not make it required or use it in an assessment to determine who can join your organization. You also shouldn't even be encouraging people to fill out an interest form, application, or hold an audition. And you also cannot post any sort of physical flyers or on the campus screens during Wildcat Welcome until the freeze is lifted. Some things you can do, though, you can certainly use your social media. We know that groups or newcomer students are interested in exploring, and there's no reason for you not to build your presence there, whether it's with story content or posts. You can also create a listing for the Cats on Campus event calendar early. So for example, if the freeze goes into effect until September 30, but it's lifted October 1, you can post that you're hosting an October 1 info session really at any time and post it on the calendar before it starts to get filled up with other events and offerings. Of course, as I mentioned, you can also host an optional online info session, take questions, share a little bit about your group if it's to your advantage. You can also create a survey or form as part of your page on Cats on Campus as well. You may not make it a deadline before the recruitment freeze is lifted, but you can host some sort of survey or interest form there. Now, SOA typically hosts org fairs at the start of the fall, winter, and spring terms. And we know that students look for opportunities to get involved at various times throughout the year. But for any in-person fair, these tips are helpful. You want to make sure you have a high quality display that brings a little bit of height because there's a lot of foot traffic walking around the whole event. And if everything is flat on the table, it can be challenging for folks to see through the bodies to see what your organization actually is and offers. Often Northwestern SOA has some free displays available, so look for information in any sort of SOA correspondence over Cats on Campus email or social media. And you want to make sure the folks that are representing your group have just a brief pitch. You don't want to meander into a 3-minute long dialogue when someone's stopping at your table. You just want to get a sentence or two and a question out to try and engage folks and engage their interest. Of course, you also want to make sure you have people that show up. For the fall fair, because there's so many people exploring all the different groups, it can be a really exhausting endeavor, and some of you probably know this. So having folks take shifts, having 2 people instead of just 1 can be really helpful. And you want to wrap up every engagement you have at the org fair with a call to action. So whether it's say, hey, make sure you add our info session to the calendar, or we'll be having tryouts next week, or whatever it is. You want to make sure that they're adding what you're offering to the schedule, signing up their email or contact information. And now with Cats on Campus, folks are going to record their attendance at the org fair by showing a QR code or snapping a QR code, and groups can do the exact same thing to get people to request to be validated for your roster. We'll share more about that in the roster management section of this Canvas course. And most groups don't take advantage of this, but similar to after any sort of job interview or first round Zoom, you want to follow up with a thank you note to those who visited your display. That can make you stand out. It's also an extra opportunity to remind folks of what you have coming up. Now, most organizations are hosting some sort of welcome or info session as a follow-up. Now, it's likely that you aren't going to get a high percentage of folks that expressed interest at the fair to come through, but you really want to value those that choose to attend, whether it's in person or over Zoom. So you'll certainly want to elaborate on background for the organization. If a framing is helpful, going through a summary of what your organization accomplished last year and what you hope to accomplish this year, whether it's similar or drastically different, can give newcomers an idea of what your organization's all about. You can also focus on how newcomers get involved so that it doesn't seem like there's just a returning leadership and then everybody else. Offer contributions of how first years in the previous year were able to have an impact and take on responsibility. More importantly, though, you really want to make sure there's some interactivity and energy coming from those that are there. No one wants to attend just a lecture and then hear someone say, what questions do you have? People, whether they're motivated by developing a skill or adding something to their resume or not, often want to find connection with others who are in attendance. So capture the energy in the moment and make sure if you don't have a designated member of your exec board in charge of recruitment or working with those who are interested, make sure there's a returning member who's able to take notes from the presentation. What seemed interesting, what grabbed attention, what did people have questions about? For larger groups, we highly recommend offering the session a few different times. With over 400 groups likely hosting info sessions, tryouts, auditions, etc., it can be really daunting for new students to try and attend more than just a few of these, especially if there's scheduling conflicts. So being able to offer it a few times or perhaps once in person, once virtual, can show that you're accommodating the need that's out there. And this has been mentioned in another session, but we also highly recommend hosting some sort of social or newcomer bonding event after the more informational session about your group to try and build on that engagement. Now, as you think about prep for the org fair, as well as folks exploring your online presence after the fair, there's nothing worse than mentioning, hey, follow us on Instagram, and then someone does that and they see you actually haven't posted anything since the end of the school year before. Now, that may be reasonable if your organization goes pretty dormant for the summer and the start of fall, but you want to have some sort of activity there. And whether that is just a reformatting of reintroduction of your group, highlighting some of your exec members, featuring opportunities to get involved in what's coming up in the fall, you want to make sure that there's some sort of presence in your online existence. Now, lastly, as I already mentioned, students are looking for ways to get involved throughout the year. It isn't just at org fairs, and it certainly isn't just at the start of fall. So if your organization is concerned about personnel levels, You can always reserve one of the high traffic tables in front of Norris for free. And you can bring your display. You can have candy or some sort of giveaway. But you want to make sure you have a clear message, and you want to make sure you still have that action item. Hey, we're looking for people to get involved because we are planning a show that's a month from now. And these are the kind of people we're looking for. Hey, we coordinate volunteer trips out into the community. And this is what we're looking for. So whatever it is, you want to make sure you have a clear message as you continue to recruit throughout the year. You can also use the rock, weather depending, of course, as another place where you'll be visible. And lastly, it's often not a priority, but note that every single time your organization is out on campus, it's an opportunity to recruit. It isn't just putting on events and activities for the student community, it's also highlighting how you can get involved. And you can also feature those and summarize them in some of your social media content. Be sure to take photos at your info session or any other sort of in-person activity, because that can be useful not only in the immediate, but for time further down the road. That's it for the session. Thanks for watching.